What do you do when your business fails, your confidence is shaken, and you're on the verge of giving up? For Chris Zimmerman, the answer was simple. He got back to the basics and started knocking doors. Today, we're talking with Chris Zimmerman of At Your Service Roofing. He's here to share his incredible journey of resilience from starting multiple businesses to finally finding success in roofing through humility and hard work. Chris is the owner of At Your Service Roofing and a partner with John Cenac in Master Your Craft. And with a background in real estate and construction, Chris's story is about overcoming failure and building something meaningful. What makes Chris unique is his ability to lead by example. He's not just about running a business, he's about growing teams, learning from every challenge, and constantly pushing himself and his team to be better. In today's episode, you'll hear how Chris turned adversity into opportunity, built a business around integrity, and continues to drive success in roofing. Let's dive into this conversation with Chris Zimmerman. Welcome to the Roofing Success Podcast. I'm Jim Aline, and I'm here to bring you insights from top leaders in the roofing industry to help you grow and scale your roofing business. Chris Zimmerman, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Awesome. At your service.
That's me.
That's you. Man, we came into getting a connection through John Cenac. You're down in the Cincinnati area, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
east side of Cincy.
Yeah, and you've been doing a lot of work with John, and that's how we connected. And it's like, man, I wanted to get you on the podcast. You're kind of like, I don't know, are you Robin to Batman yet, or what's the relationship there with John? Or are you Batman and John's Robin? I don't know which one now.
That's hilarious. There's definitely, I own my own business. I have a few businesses. I coach football and stuff, and so I'm used to being the leader. And this has been my relationship with John, and the business that we have in our relationship has been very nice for me because it's really the first chance that I've had in a long, long time to be the number two, to kind of be the behind the scenes guy or the lesser known guy. And so, there's always a pride thing, right? I don't want to be Robin. But when John's as good as he is, it's easy to be like, yeah, great, man. You can have the limelight or the spotlight, and that's fine by me. It's actually very, very nice. So, that's a great question. As far as Master Your Craft, John and I are 50-50 partners in that.
Yeah.
And John and I, we have a lot of our values align very, very well. Our tactics and our strengths and weaknesses are very opposite, which fill in those gaps and makes for a really good partnership. Yeah. That's right. So, Mike Goldenstein just put out a little promo for RoofCon where John's in Superman, superimposed on Superman, and I'm Batman. But you're probably right. I'm probably more Robin right now than that. But yeah, he's the superstar, the rock star, and I'm happy to have that partnership with him. And what we've got going has been really awesome. We just got back from Kansas City yesterday, but we're on the road now together all the time, 2-3 times a month at least. And it's been a great ride so far.
Yeah, you guys are providing an immense value to the industry. Let's get people to know you a little bit more, though. Outside of Master Your Craft, you have At Your Service Roofing, and started that. Talk about your story. How'd you get into roofing? Where did you come from? How'd At Your Service get started?
Yeah, so technically, I started At Your Service in 2005. Although really, we were doing more remodeling. It was my right-hand man, Joby, and I. We were doing tile, basement finishes, kitchen remodels, bath remodels, and things like that. I've got a background in real estate. My dad was really a pioneer in the single-family real estate investor side, and so it was always a lot cheaper if we went in and fixed up our own properties than hiring a company to do so. And so that's kind of where I got my background in the industry. And then I stepped away to pursue some other opportunities. I started a couple other businesses, and they did okay. They weren't killing it. They did okay. And it came to a point where I was married. My third kid was on the way, and I knew the business that I had wasn't going to be the business. And so I was at a low point, honestly. Emotionally, I was struggling. I didn't like the taste of failure, or what I considered failure at the time. I met with my business consultant, and he said, "Chris, you can sell. Get a sales job. You can make your X dollars or whatever, and fill your quota in 20 or 30 hours a week. It takes most guys 40 or 50, and then take that other time and plot your next move. Build your next business." And so my brother-in-law had been telling me about this opportunity in roofing, and that I should do it. And I remember saying vividly to him, I'm not going to knock doors. I'm too good for that. The pride was getting me. And luckily, I think the Lord kind of checked me and beat me down well enough to say, no, you're not above knocking doors. That's exactly what you're going to do. So I took a sales job doing exactly what my business consultant said. And I did very well. This is back when, roofs were 260, 270 a square. I sold $1 million in my first 8 months in the industry, which I think is still pretty good. But back then that was pretty good. And so rather than plotting my next business, I went to that owner over the winter, and I said, listen, we've got something here. I can build a sales team. I think there's a lot of things that I can do to grow this company. And he didn't really want to grow. He didn't really want to give up any slice of the pie, so to speak. And I wasn't looking for ownership by any means, just an override on the team that I built and things like that. And he said, Chris, if you have a better opportunity, I suggest you take it. And I thought, well, that's pretty sound advice. And so that winter, I started developing I reopened At Your Service, but this time not really for remodeling. It was really roofing. And that was it. And that's been, 14 years ago, something like that, maybe. And so we've been doing primarily roofing. We do siding, gutters, and some other things as well. But the vast majority of who we are and what we do is roofing. A lot of that is on the claim side as well. Of course, we do retail, but we're really good at the claim side. And so that's a focus of ours. And really the last 12 to 14 years have really been focused on residential claims. And so that's kind of what At Your Service is, and kind of how we got here.
So back then, were you doing when you were doing the remodeling side of things? Was that pre-real estate crash, around the real estate crash? Is that what I'm?
Yeah, that would have been. So we started that in 05.
7, 8, and then that 7, 8 hit.
Yep.
Is that where some of the motivation that God gave you to go knock doors did it come from that economic downturn, or where?
It did. So I grew up in the real estate industry, but I don't have a passion for real estate. I think it's a great tool. I think it's probably the most valuable, the best tool there is for building wealth. And I see its potential. I see its value, but I don't love it. And so I did like getting my hands dirty. I like doing the work. But it didn't take too long before you're like, I don't want to do this for 30 years. And so I stepped away. There were some other opportunities. I do have an entrepreneurial spirit. I hate that word. I think it's tossed around way too casually. And so I would say that I'm a business person more than an entrepreneur.
I call myself unemployable, Chris. I just call myself unemployable.
That's right. So there were just a couple other opportunities that I thought, oh, this is fun. I'm a starter. I like starting new things. I like building it. Once it's able to run, I lose interest. And so I did a couple of these other projects, which had nothing to do with real estate or construction or anything like that. It was really more in the digital marketing and advertising space. Did some things there. And then really, like I said, it just was a point where I went, I'm not going to feed my family off of this. And at this point in my life, I'm now in my late 20s. I need to make a move. I need to become established. And so I took the sales job as a stopgap. Like, this was just a means to an end. I need some money while I figure out what I'm going to do. My dad actually had a roofing and remodeling company when I was in high school and college. And I was very blessed. He sent me to private school. I went to a pretty darn good university. And so when I got out of school, he goes, Chris, I'm going to shut down this company unless you want it. And I remember very vividly looking at my dad with this smirk saying, Dad, I don't want to be a roofer. I'm too good for that, or whatever it was. Again, there's that pride. And so he shut down the company. And then it wasn't more than, 6 years later, 8 years, something like that, where I went back to my dad and I said, well, Dad, it looks like I'm going to start a roofing company. And, he looks at me like, you got to be kidding me. Right. And so, but yeah, I got into roofing like so many people as a necessity. I needed a job that I could make some money, where I could control my earnings, where if I just worked hard and long hours, and was savvy enough, I was going to make good money. And I did. And it was kind of hard to make that jump, because my last business, it didn't fail, but it certainly didn't succeed. And I was questioning myself. Do I have what it takes to run a business? Am I capable? Maybe this is harder than I thought. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought. And so then I stepped out on my own, and we did, the first year we did okay. And then we did very well. And we've really had great success for the most part, ever since.
I think it's a weird thing. Those failures eat you up for a little bit, right? Or even if they're not complete failures, like you're saying, it just didn't work the way you wanted it to, or whatever that is. And I think that I there's that term imposter syndrome, right? Like when you get in,
Sure.
I find so many times, talking to contractors that are maybe new or starting out, and I love to ask them how many of their friends and family they've told that they've started the business. And a lot of times it's zero.
Yeah.
And the reason that it's zero is because they don't feel comfortable with what they're doing yet, right? They don't know that they can produce a good result yet, right?
Well, there's certainly the fear of failure is very,
Yeah.
very real. The people that are close to you, they see your failures in the past. They see your weaknesses and your faults. And so, yeah, imposter syndrome is very, very real. I'm by nature a fairly confident person. I think I had a very, very close relationship with my dad. And I think that's where that confidence comes from. We spent a half hour. He had to drive me to school because he sent me to private school. There was no busing. It was a half hour each way. So that was an hour a day of one-on-one time with my dad. And he was a very savvy, smart man. And so most of that confidence comes from that. But like I said, I'm a fairly by nature confident person. And I still struggle with that, asking myself. And when it comes to at your service, that's pretty much gone. I've been doing this for 15 years or more. I don't deal with that, but I've got, the master your craft that I do with John. I have actually 2 other businesses that I own, and a third that I really want to get off the ground here soon. I just need some time. And so when I start venturing into those, that imposter syndrome is very easy to creep back in and go, can you really handle this volume? Or that's not contracting. This is a different world. This is whatever it is. Are you really capable of it? Are you savvy enough to do that? And so it's a very real thing for sure.
It's a very real thing. It's amazing how even the most, like, I know some of the most successful, like some very, very, very successful people. It's natural. So for those of you listening, like, understand that it happens to the best of us, right? Like there is no one that is immune to it, unless you're psychotic. Maybe you may have to be like a real sociopath to not have any, maybe that.
There's a lot of good that comes from it, though.
It is.
It checks your pride,
Mm-hmm.
and it can ground you. You just have to be aware of it so that you can understand, like, if you let it take control, if you let it dominate your headspace, you're going to be, in a downward negative space, and that's no space to live in.
Yeah.
And so it's good to it's actually a good thing, I think, to have, but you have to be aware of it, and you can't let it control you. You have to control it.
Yeah, definitely. On those half-hour trips with Dad, what were some of the dadisms? What were some of his major lessons that he gave you, man? Like, what were some of the ones that stand out?
Yeah. So one of my favorites, and I don't think he had like a saying necessarily, but it was this concept of when someone says something or does something to you, and you allow that to like eat at you, they're owning you. They're dominating. They said that to you, and then they went on with their day, and they're not thinking about that. And if you allow that to eat at you and to be in that, they're beating you all day long. And how are you going to let some other person control your emotional state, your head state? And so there was a real, when somebody does something to me that I don't like, they say something or they react a certain way. I'm very good at saying, that's really out of my control. It doesn't affect me, and I'm not going to allow it to affect me, because I'm not going to let you own me. I'm not going to let you beat me in that sense. And so I'm naturally very forgiving because of that. That's a big one, because so many people allow themselves to be ruled by their emotions. And if I can rule you, then I can puppet you by just, once I learn what your hot buttons are, what your pressure points are, then I can press those buttons and I can absolutely kind of control you. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let somebody do that to me. So that's definitely one that's gone a long, long way. He also always taught me to observe human nature. Human beings do not behave logically and rationally. In fact, it's very rare for them to do so. And so when you see somebody, they've got a decision to make, you would think, oh, well, clearly they're going to do X because that makes sense. And so often they don't, right? They do Y. And then he asks, why is it that they did that? Well, I don't know. That was really dumb. That was, yeah, but like, it's important that you understand why it is. And so I've been studying, and really, I shouldn't say studying, observing human nature since I was like 8, 9 years old. And so I can't tell you how many meetings I have where I'm talking with my team, right? And maybe we're talking about a client, that a large project. And they go, well, we gave them this reason, and this reason, and this reason. I think they're going to go with us, or they're not going to go, whatever it is. And I can often predict people's decision making and behaviors better than they can predict themselves, because I understand how the different drivers and different emotions. And I said, yes, this decision doesn't make sense, but I've seen someone have to make this same type of decision dozens of times, and 80% of the time they choose this. So I'm able to predict that. And then I tell my team, like, this is what I think they're going to do. And then they're like blown away by, how in the world would you able to figure that out? I never would have thought that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And it goes, listen, it's really not that hard, right? If you, most people make assumptions, and they will stick to those assumptions till death. And assumptions are fine. You got to start somewhere. But when there's real world evidence, and when there's data that comes in that says your assumption's wrong, you need to be willing to change that assumption. And so those are two of the big ones that he did. But virtually every success that I have, or every strength or positive thing that I have, I can trace back to those conversations in that car ride.
That's amazing. Now, in those moments when your team is like, hey, I think they're going to make some of this decision, what are some of those that you see most often, that you're like, no, people always make this decision, even that it's not as logical? They're making the emotional decision.
Well, one that comes to mind is when, I do a lot of consulting in the roof space, especially over the last 2 years. And I'll have owners that say, well, this sales guy would never do that to me because I've been so good to him. I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. And I go, I believe you. And those things are true. But in the moment, that person is going to either choose you or me. And it doesn't matter what you've done for them. There are very few people in this world, a very small percentage, that are willing to sacrifice themselves for somebody else. And so you think to yourself, how in the world could this person make this decision? Well, if their only other decision was harming themselves, they're going to harm you, and they're going to hate themselves for it. And then what they're going to do is they're going to convince themselves that you deserved it. The subconscious has a really hard time. The conscious mind will not allow you to think that you're a terrible person. So when you're going to do something that you know you shouldn't do, the subconscious mind has to protect the conscious mind. And it has to come up with ways to find that, hey, that person that you did that terrible thing to, they actually deserved it because they did X, Y, and Z. And so you can actually see those things coming. You can see somebody treating you a way that you're like, that's different. That's not how they normally treat me. That's weird. I wouldn't expect that. And I go, yeah, they're getting ready to do something to you. They're getting ready to make a decision that's going to harm you. And their subconscious mind is basically prepping their conscious mind to allow that decision.
Yeah.
And I see that. I see that all the time. I see that with homeowners that you're dealing with, right? I see that inside of organizations and the relationships between sales and ownership or whoever it is. And then you see that in personal relationships. And I have 4 kids right now. And my kid will be, no, my friend would never lie to me because, we've been friends for so long and we do this and we're this. And I go, I know you think that. And that's very admirable. And I'm glad that you think that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, as soon as the pain that they're going to experience reaches a certain threshold, they will do anything to you in order to avoid that pain. And so most people experience that and they don't understand it. They don't know why. And therefore they can't predict it. They can't really resolve it emotionally themselves. And so they just go on and they'll make that same mistake next time, or they'll trust the person they shouldn't have, or whatever it is. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
No, it does. It's great. And I think it makes me think of team members who end up being around too long sometimes. A lot of times you could see those signs, and a lot of times people will justify. You can hear it in you've. I guarantee you've had conversations with some people, friend group, someone from high school, your cousin. You know what I mean? Where they're like, yeah. Heck with my employer. They're making all this money. I'm doing it. It's that justification for their lack of ability or lack of doing in the business. There's so many things. I could see that on the customer side, right? Like of how they're trying to get out of the contract with you.
When they start making mountains of molehills, or they start
that's right
questioning things that they never questioned before.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the real, to someone like me, it doesn't matter that it happened. The question that I want to ask is, why did that happen? If I can understand how that did, because it's so illogical, it's so irrational. So if I can understand how that person made that decision and why they did it, then that's going to give me a lot of information that I can use in the future to avoid the same situation, where I think most people just go, well, they're just a terrible person.
Yeah.
And so then they think, well, the next guy, he's a good person. He's not going to do it to me. And then they do. And then there's this, not a habit, but a pattern of this happening. And then you just become jaded and you don't trust people. Where I go, no, I know people are, in my opinion, inherently good. It's just that when they're put under enough stress and pressure and risk of pain, they're going to behave in a way that protects themselves, and they will justify it by any means necessary.
Yeah. Do you worry about that from a business perspective? Do you worry about that more from a customer perspective, from your business perspective, from your team, from your subs, where are you looking for the danger? If I could put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, the customers, it's going to happen with customers.
Yeah.
And in the roofing space, we might do 500 roofs a year. So 500 customers, and I'm not the sales rep on these days, I'm not really a sales rep on hardly any of those. So there's really nothing I can do about that. But in the team, absolutely, because if things happen inside the team, then the culture is at risk, and then the business is at risk. If a customer screws you, takes advantage of you, it happens. You chalk it up, you move on. It's really not that big of a deal. But when it happens inside the team, the effects are magnified. It can have a massive effect on the business. And so I think that's where really you for me anyway, that's where my eye is definitely going to be on that. I think there's more to the question, and I'm kind of drawing a blank.
No, that makes and that is where the most risk is from a business perspective, right? It's always with the team, and it's within the culture. How quickly the culture can change with one bad apple, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that can happen there, man. Like
that's right. So one thing I teach in Master Your Craft all the time is, again, this is my opinion. I don't have any scientific data to support it, but I've just got a lifetime of experience that says that any problem that you have, whether it's in business or personal, doesn't really matter. It's really can be lumped into one of two categories. It's either an anomaly or it's systemic. And so in my religious, spiritual, whatever beliefs, we live in a fallen world. There's sin. People do things they shouldn't do. And so anomalies are going to happen. You can't predict them. You can't stop them from happening. They're going to happen. However, as soon as something becomes a pattern, I see it happening repeatedly. Now it's systemic. And any systemic issue can be solved with a system and process. Some of those systems and processes can be pretty easy. Some are very, very difficult. Some are going to take you 6 systems and processes to finally find the one, and whatever it is. But the way that I've done that in my business is that people become, like you said in your example, if somebody wants to do something that they know they shouldn't do, they start saying things like, well, they don't value me and I do this and they don't do this, right? And that justification starts happening. So I'm not going to be able to prevent that from happening. That's a human nature thing. What I can do is build a system that makes it difficult to do that. So one is I want to make sure that anytime there's a decision, some decisions are black and white, but in business, there's a lot of gray decisions. And so I have a history of, if there's a sales commission, it's like, well, you didn't really perform this duty, but, if not, the company just keeps it. Whenever there's that, like, you're not sure, I always say, like in baseball, the tie goes to the runner. So if there's a gray area, I'm going to give it to my employee because that's the way that's the right thing in my opinion. And so I've got a habit of doing that. And so that way, when they try to justify their terrible actions, it makes it harder for them to do. Or I can sit down and say, give me an example of a time that I took advantage of you, that I misled you, that I chose myself over you. Because I'm going to ask them questions and start tearing down the narrative that they've built, erroneously in their head. And I'm going to make it very tough for them to do what they're about to do. And it's not going to stop them from doing it. They're still going to do it because the stress, the pain, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to stop it, but I can make it very uncomfortable and difficult for them. The other thing that I want to do is compartmentalize my business. And it's not just to prevent this. There's a lot of benefits to it, but most companies in the roofing space, right? They have the whole company is just sales reps. There's like one admin in the office and an owner, and then the rest of the company is just project managers, right? Sales reps, and they're cradle to grave. And so they do everything. And so they can leave at a moment's notice and go somewhere else and do it, start their own company and do it, whatever it is. But it's very difficult to have one person who can sell, who's comfortable climbing roofs, who's got enough integrity to not vandalize roofs, which is a real issue in our industry, who can deal with the adjuster and do all of the repair to replacement and supplementing and write an exactament. And then they got to schedule, build the material order, schedule the job, be on site. They're doing quality control. And I'm like, you don't know anything about roofing. Like, why are you the quality control guy? And so I want to compartmentalize my business, and I want to have people, my salespeople don't get on roofs. They just sell. That's it. Lead gen, contingencies, if it's a claim, and contracts. I've got production guys that can build the order and site manage the actual build. I've got a supplement team that handles all of that, right? The mental makeup, the strengths and weaknesses that are beneficial to dealing with insurance adjusters and the claim process do not lend well to sales. Salespeople tend to be highly emotional. And if you take an emotional person and put them into a negotiation or a process with the claims, it's not going to go well. And so I segment my business that way. And I think that it solves a lot of issues. But one of those is the issue that we're talking about and you're describing.
Yeah. And I think that's what, to build a business, if you're actually building a business, you're thinking of risk reduction, you're thinking of succession planning, you're thinking of things that of a structure that will allow for the business not to go out of business, right? Like you needed it, sure. You need it to continue. And I've seen too many companies and owners. I'm sure you talk to them all the time too. Man, mm-hmm. My top sales rep left, and now we're doing 50% of what we did last year. My 2 top sales reps left, and they went and started their own company, and they're competing with me now. And they're
as private equity's moved into the space, the question I'm asking myself is, what are they buying? Because I used to wonder what these other companies look like, but now with my consulting, I've got a good look at the inside of these companies. And I don't care if it's a one-man operation, if it's, doing 500,000, if it's a small team doing 3 to 5 million, or the big boys. Like, most of these companies are shell companies. I go, what is that private equity buying? They don't have real estate. They don't have a fleet of vehicles and W-2 crews and equipment and tools. You can make an argument they have a brand, although I think I can make an argument that a lot of them don't really have a brand. And I can say that the same thing for myself. Like, my brand is not strong in Cincinnati or nowhere where it should be. That wasn't my focus for a long time. And so they're really just buying a hustle, like a group of people that are out there just selling. And there's money to be made. I get that, but I go, I split with my partner. I was a 50-50 owner of At Your Service Roofing, and I bought my partner out in early 21. Yeah, early 21. And in the negotiations, it wasn't going well. And I go, well, one thing we can do is just shut the company down. Let's just dissolve it. And his attorney was basically like, well, that would be insane. Why would you do that? And I go, well, I can shut the doors and just open up Zimmerman Roofing, and I'm going to do the same volume I did last year. So, again, these private equity companies that are coming in, and especially some of the companies that are being bought up are ones that I know. And I go, maybe I'm just not a good VC guy. I don't know, but I don't know what they're buying because it's not really a business. It's possible. I hope not. But yeah, there's like I said, they're shell companies, and there are good ones out there. Trust me, I train a lot of good ones that are really good that I'm envious of when I leave, and I go, man, that guy's got a really good brand. He's really built a business. Man, what a great culture. But a lot of them, there's really not. It's an owner, an admin, and a bunch of salespeople. And that's it.
That's how this podcast got started. Like, I was talking to to the ones that you're talking about that you're like, ooh, you're doing good. And then I'm talking to some other people, and I'm like, whoa, you got a lot to learn, or there's some gaps that you need to fill here. And that's actually how the podcast came to be. Was I wanted those people that have those struggles or having those struggles to hear from people who are doing it well. And that's the whole concept of what we do here. And when you're talking about private equity, and even anyone buying a business, right? I was talking to a big, it's probably the largest business broker in HVAC the other day. And he told me, he said, I never have anyone call me asking if they could buy a job.
Right.
I've never had that phone call. He's never had the phone call. The guy sold a lot of HVAC companies and still does. And he just has never picked up the phone and someone saying, I'm looking to buy a job. It's amazing how if you are the company with.
Well, and that goes into the consulting. I'm at a point where, and at your service, I really hate cliches, but I guess I'll just dive in. I'm at the point where I'm finally working on the business, not in the business. Yeah. I tried it 4 or 5 years ago, and it was outside just some like disruptions that were really anomalies. And I was like, oh, that didn't go well. Back into it. But I'm now at the point where I'm out of the day-to-day a lot. And I was just my general manager, like a half hour ago, we were chatting about maybe I need to go get another office, like a studio office, and literally not be in here, like come into the office at your service one day a week. But talking about, being in consulting, that's a different story because there's no difference. Like, you are the company, you are the brand, right? So I had a guy that was like, well, why don't you have an assistant that's answering all these questions on Facebook? And I go, well, they would have to have my knowledge and experience. They would have to have my ability, like that you can't. Like, in all my travels, right, outside of John, there's like 3 or 4 guys that I could name that I would say, if they answer your question, just trust it complicitly. Like, it's going to be right. Like there's that few guys out there. And I go, so there is no, right. I can't send my assistant to go into a company and go to a private training with them. They're gonna be like, no, this isn't what we paid for. This isn't what we want. Right. And so consulting is not necessarily where I, and there's no exit value either. Right.
No.
Like who's going to buy a consultation company? Like once that person's gone, there is no business. So, at the same time, and that's why I hate the business of consulting. I think I find us in a position where the industry needs. I feel that John and I are filling a demand. We're supplying the demand, but we're not doing it for the economics of it, the money of it. We're doing it. It's desperately needed, and John and I, we align very well because we have very, very similar values, and what we're doing, the effects of what we're doing is definitely in line with our values and kind of fulfilling our mission. So I hate the business of consulting, but I'm loving the results and the impact that we're having.
Yeah, it's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like, how did Superman and Batman come to be?
I appreciate you switching that up and I'm no longer Robin. I don't think I didn't notice. I appreciate you. That's a long story. I'll tell it. I'll try to be brief. Yeah. John came out with NTS, the NTS reports, and I'm in as far as business, I'm an innovator. I'm a creator. I like creative, strategic thinking, and so I grasped the information that he presented. The light bulb for me went off, and I went, "Oh, I know what to do with this info." And so for the first year and a half of NTS, it turns out, I didn't know this, but I was the largest user of the NTS reports. I was his number one client. And, we're not a big company. I'm not a scale guy. At that time we were probably doing 4 or 5 million a year. And so there's companies out there using NTS that are way, national companies. But they didn't know how to use it. And so, I went to one of John's classes. One of his first classes was in Cincinnati, and I went to that, and we had an interaction. And I literally, the very first thing I ever said to John, and I'll keep it PG, we're at a break, and I said, "Hey, I want to just introduce myself and say thank you, but seriously, F you." And I looked him right in the eyes and said, "F you," and he kind of smiles and he's taken back. He goes, "Well, that's aggressive." And I said, "Listen, I don't, I'm just making a point that." A lot of what you're doing, I've been doing, and I've made a lot of money. I've been hunting discontinued shingles for, at that point, 8 years. And so you're out here giving out all the secret sauce, and I don't appreciate it. However, he opened my eyes to a lot of other things and taught me a lot of things. So that was our first interaction. And then about a year after that, which would have been, this would have been just 2 years ago. He calls me up, and he says, "Chris, I want to come in town." Yeah, he calls me and he goes, "Hey, I want to introduce myself. I'm John Cenac." I said, I know who you are, bud. And I go, "The question is, why are you calling me?" So he says, "Well, I want to come in town. I don't live far away. I'm about an hour and a half away. I want to come in town, take you out to dinner, your team, whoever, and I want to take you out to dinner and say thank you." And I go, "So you're going to drive in and spend a couple grand on a big dinner at a nice steakhouse to say thank you for me buying reports?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "John, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but there's more to it. I don't believe you. What do you need? What do you want?" So he tells me, "Chris, you're the largest user of NTS in the country, and you're clearly you've built a process that's successful. And if I can learn what you're doing, I can teach other people how to do that, and I can sell more NTS reports, affect more people in the industry." So I said, "Sure, come on in town." So we do that. We had a nice dinner, had fun. We went out and had drinks. John and I have a lot of commonality there. We're both pretty bougie. We both love good bourbon, as a lot of other things in common as well. So we just had fun. It was a good night. A month or two goes by, and he calls me up and he says, "I see that you're registered for the Nashville class." I said, "Yeah, I'm coming in town. I'm going to bring a couple of my people, and we're excited for your class." And he goes, "Well, would you mind speaking?" And I go, John, I'll if you ask me for a favor, I'm going to do it. But my God, I speak on what? Well, just put something together, with some slides and whatever, and how you do things and walk people through. This was 36 hours before the event. And I go, John, I'm not a speaker. Like, I've never really done anything like that before. So I go back in my office, I whiteboard out a flow chart on how I use NTS reports. I asked my designer to come in, and he comes in and puts together a keynote presentation, makes it all pretty. And boom, I don't even have time to like practice it, right? We just made it, and I know it. It's all up here. So I go down to Tennessee, and I give this presentation. I had to leave right away because I had to get back for my son's football practice I was coaching. So it's a 5-hour drive home. So by the time I'm still on the road and the class is over, John calls me and he goes, Chris, there's 30 guys here that want your contact information. They want to get a copy of your presentation. Everybody's kind of talking about what you presented. That was really great. And I was shocked. I was like, this is just what we do. Doesn't everybody do this? So I was completely shocked. It was not what I was expecting. He calls me up another 2 weeks later, goes, hey, I've got a 2-day class in Minnesota. Would you willing to go up there and do it again? I go, it's the off season. Yeah, sure. I'll go. He goes, okay, well, what do I need to pay you? I said, John, you've made me a lot of money, whether you know it or not. I'm good, man. You cover my costs. I'll go do it. No big deal. So we do those, same response. And so then he goes, well, do you just want to go on tour? I said, all right, until season starts. Sure. So I did probably 15 of those. I don't know, 10, 15 of those across the country. So we're driving home from one. I think it was Cleveland or Chicago. Somewhere where we were driving together. And I said, John, listen, man, I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. Season starting back up. And quite honestly, I feel like I've paid my debt to you. And I don't really want to travel like this. I've got, a family, and so I'm done. This is my last one. And he goes, well, I'm sad to hear that. I have a lot of fun doing this. I said, yeah, no, I like it too. Like, at this point, we're buddies. And he goes, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to run my roofing business. And I go, but every time we do one of these in one of these cities, there's 2 to 5 guys that ask me to mentor them or meet with them or train them or something. And I said, I'm just going to start a little group, but I'm going to do it all on Zoom, and we'll just do 1 or 2 a month, and I'll just sit down and we'll talk about a hot topic, and I'll charge them, whatever it is. And it'll make some nice little side hustle money, but I'll be able to help all these guys out, but I don't have to travel. And John gets really, really quiet. And am I allowed to swear on this,
Sure.
On this podcast? I don't know.
Okay.
So he gets quiet. And if you know John, that's I'm like, whoa, he doesn't get quiet very often, right? And I'm thinking, did I just cross a line? Did I make him mad? Is this the end of our friendship? So he gets quiet and he's driving, and all of a sudden he goes, fuck, that's way smarter than what I'm doing. And I start laughing, and he goes, well, I don't want to step on your toes, but you want to just do it together. And I said, no, 100%, man. You're the superstar. Yeah, let's just do it together. And that was where Master Your Craft was born. And today, that's really the heart of Master Your Craft is this community we're building. It's a private training group, so you have to apply for it. And once you're in, we do 3 trainings a month. John leads one, I lead one, and we have a guest speaker that we bring in. And it's all roofing related. It's not necessarily, it's mostly claim centered, right? But that's where Master Your Craft was really born from. And then we also, we were in Kansas City yesterday doing a large loss consultation. There's a contractor that's got a 25, 30 building project. He's struggling through the claim process. So we go out there and do our testing and get our information. Obviously, we travel around the country and do these group classes. And then we also do private trainings together or solo, things like that. So that's kind of where Master Your Craft was kind of born.
It's funny where paths lead you. I'm a big I love the kind of what they refer to as where luck comes from, right?
Yeah.
And where opportunity meets preparation, right? That's where luck comes from. And a lot of times it's just if you're just doing the right thing all the time and you're getting, you're moving along that path, and all of a sudden these things come about in your life that you're like, oh man, this is
Yeah, and people want to call it, whether it's God or the universe or karma, whatever it is, but you're exactly right. If you continually are just doing the right thing, putting good out into the world, there's laws of attraction, right? And honestly, that's where, in the end, John and I, our relationship started because there was some mutual benefit. But if we didn't connect on a value level and weren't friends and didn't have that, it would have ended right there. And I would have done a couple of his courses or trainings, and it would have been a fun 15 minutes in my 15 minutes of roof fame for whatever that's worth. And it would have just been a cool story to tell or whatever. And that would have been it. But because our values align so well, and we actually developed a really I mean, there's not a day that goes by that we don't talk 2 or 3 times. I think both of our wives are jealous of, you know what I mean? Like you talk to Chris more than you talk to me, or you talk to John more than but we're also getting to the point where we're doing some really cool stuff. And I said this to John, I'm starting a new business, and I don't want to say much about it at this point, but obviously he knows about it. He goes, Chris, I don't want to step on your toes or be invited to a party I'm not invited to, but man, I would love to be a part of that. That sounds really interesting. I said, John, this isn't about, I want this percent or this is mine or that's yours. I go, let's just go have fun and do really cool shit together.
Yeah.
And he kind of laughed, and he's like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. So this isn't about, oh, well, this is my idea, and so I'm going to do this. Like, who cares, man? Like we both do well financially. We're pretty secure. We make good money. Let's not think about ownership or money or any of those things. Let's just think about what effect can we have on this industry while having a lot of fun doing it. And it turns out that there you can have quite a bit of effect on the industry.
That's
and I think we're starting to prove that.
That's awesome. I think there's I think I'm well over 200 episodes of this podcast now, 220s, somewhere in the 220s awesome. By the time this comes out. And I'll tell you, like, a common thread that I've, like, if I put all of the episodes in AI and I said, what's the common thread between all of these owners? All of the owners who have been successful or have expressed that they're always trying to do the right thing. Right. And it's like, and we were talking about this, earlier and the other day or whatever. And I wanted you to kind of go into that, because I think that it's the common thread between all success. And it kind of, that the story about the new business with John, it's kind of just that same thing. It's like, like we know that we're doing the right thing and we have the right motivations. That the people you have around you, or just the people that you could call on, if they're doing the right thing, like the groups that you're around, whether it's RSRA or Master Your Craft or all these different places where there's some really good people who are all just like, everyone is trying to just be on this path of taking care of their team, taking care of the homeowners, taking care of, their families.
People want to belong to something. It's an innate human nature, right? We want to belong to a team. We want to belong to a cause. I think it's Simon Cenac that talks about the just cause, that your company has to have a just, if it's just about coming to work and making money, no one's going to stick around for that. They're going to stick around for a little while. They're going to make their money and they're going to move on. But when there's a just cause, that everybody has that mission that they're doing, that greater mission, that's where you really build culture. That's where you can really build something special. And so, I'll do a shameless plug here, and I don't know how soon this airs. I don't know, but RoofCon is in a few weeks, and about a week or two ago, Hunter Ballou of RoofCon and Revolt asked if I'd be willing to do a keynote speech or whatever presentation, which is an awesome honor. I was like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a lot of fun. I want to do that. But, so I go, what do you want me to talk about? Because I'm used to talking about claims. I'm used to talking about roofing and shingles and documentation and evidence. And he goes, no, not that. Right. Like, you've got a breakout speaker. That's when you talk about that stuff. And so this to me was like wide open. And, I had a topic. I thought, and John and I were in Memphis together when Hunter gave me the invite, and so the drive home, we're talking about some different things. What are we gonna, what should I be talking about? What are some things we're kind of fleshing it out? And I had something that I thought was pretty good, and that's where I've been my mind's been. And last night, driving home from the airport at 11:30 last night, it kind of the light bulb goes off, and it's literally about the exact same, doing the right thing. And everybody, human nature, like I said earlier, I believe that inherently we are good.
Yeah.
It's just that we live in a fallen world, and there's a lot of external forces and pressures and things like that. And everybody makes mistakes and does things they shouldn't do, myself obviously included. But our nature is that we want to do the right thing. Some people have a really hard time understanding what is the right thing. And that was really hard for me to understand, because I had a really positive childhood and upbringing. My parents were married all the way through. My dad passed away, unfortunately, 7 years ago, but they were married. My brother and sister were older than me. I was the baby. They took really good care of me. We're still close. I got a good education. My dad sent me to private school and this and that. I don't have trauma in my life, at least not that I'm aware of. So I've got a lot of advantages there. And so when I think about doing the right thing, it's not that hard. I can hear my dad's voice in my head when I have that struggle, that decision, and it becomes very clear. But a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't have a positive relationship with their dad or their parents, or they have a lot of trauma in their life and things like that. And so some of the people just aren't enabled with the right tools to know what the right thing is. Some people have been reactionary their whole life, and it's just this as simple as pleasure and pain. Hey, this decision sounds painful. This one sounds pleasurable. Well, that's an easy decision. I'm going to do this. Where I think myself and hopefully a lot of people out there have been given the tools to think it might be pleasure today, but it's pain down the road. Do I really want to do this? Let me think through this and really think about how it affects myself, how it affects other people. So one, we want to do the right thing inherently. But a lot of us don't know how to do the right thing, or we feel we've been told or taught that if somebody else does something wrong to us, then we're allowed to do something wrong to them. And I was actually teaching a class in Columbus, and a guy came up to me at the break, a contractor, and he goes, well, in this situation, I would do this. And I said, well, man, I got to tell you, that sounds really disrespectful. And I wouldn't advise ever doing that. And he goes, well, he was already disrespectful to me. And I said, okay, so if he's disrespectful to you, then you can be disrespectful to him. And he goes, yeah. And I go, I got to tell you, man, I got 4 boys at home, and I tell them all the time, I go, why did you hit your brother? Well, he hit me. And I go, so if someone else does something to you, that gives you permission to then do something you're not supposed to do. Like, your behavior needs to align with what I have taught you your behavior should be, right? Because they're still children. But as an adult, your behavior shouldn't be influenced and controlled by what external forces and other people are doing. Your behavior should be controlled by your own core values, your own sense of right and wrong. If somebody does something wrong to me, that doesn't give me the right to do something back wrong to them. But a lot of people have been told that, they've been taught that, and it's a easy fallacy to believe. So I love what you said there, that the core common principle between all of the people that you've met, or the ones that you feel are successful or whatever it is, this common theme of doing the right thing. And it is, and again, whether it's God or the universe or karma or whatever you want to call it, that's fine. But if you put that good out there, you're going to attract that same thing back. You're going to have people that are jaded in the industry, and they've been burned by a bunch of owners, and then they're going to come and see you, and they're probably going to be very leery of you, right? Like, oh, here's another, like, he's going to be a snake because nobody's really does that good or whatever. But they'll watch and then they'll test, and then once they come on board, but eventually, and you're going to have people that want, they've got their just cause, they've got their group that they belong to, and that's going to turn into culture, and that's going to turn into growth and revenue, and ultimately profit. So again, yeah.
What advice could you give someone on determining, like, what is the right thing? What's a framework for making that decision?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to give away my entire RoofCon presentation. No, I'm just kidding. So this is very, very simple. And that's so much in this world requires a 30,000 foot view. We can't see the forest through the trees. We got to get up high, and it gives you so much clarity. So in the business world, at Your Service Roofing, it is very, very simple. The what to do is very simple. Actually doing it requires discipline and is a lot tougher. But I ask myself two questions. The first question is, if I've got a decision to make and there's two decisions or two choices, which one is best for the long-term health of this business? Because I understand that we all eat from this business. And if this business goes down, we all go down. If this business takes off, we all go up with it. And so it's not what's good today. It's what's best for the long-term health of the business. And the second question I ask is, which of these decisions or which of these choices best aligns with our mission statement and core values? And I can tell you that I've had dozens, hundreds of difficult decisions, but when I asked it inside of that framework with those two questions, 95, 99% become very, very clear. So not only does it become very clear on which decision to make, but it becomes incredibly easy to justify that decision. Because if I make the wrong decision, I chose correctly at the time. It just turned out things happened and it didn't work out. And if my team comes to me and go, Chris, why would you do that? Look at what it resulted in. And I go, well, let me tell you why. And so now I not only will they understand, but I think though there's a level of respect that gets built. And so it's I always tell my team, it's not what's good for me. It's not what's good for this company tomorrow, or today. It's about the long-term health of the company, and that any decision that I make, I talked to a guy today that owns a company, a roofing company. He's a great guy, great company. And he's got a person that's been with him for a long time, and he let them go, and they're suing him and trying to claim discrimination or whatever it is. But if I have to sit in a court of law, which I literally might have to do one day, I can justify every decision that I've ever made because it all boils down to those two things. And it might have been the bad decision, but at least I know why I made it, and I can justify it, and I can be accountable to it.
Yeah, and it's with the right intention, right? Like I think there's like that intentionality behind it of doing the right thing, what's best for the business, what's best for the situation long term, not short term. It makes it much.
Roofing company owners are incredibly short-sighted. I mean,
It's challenging, man. It is. Yeah. I mean, you were in those early days.
I mean, you're in marketing. My God, how many guys go, well, I gave you some money and it's been 2.5 months and I haven't blown up yet. I need my money back, or I'm leaving, or whatever it is. And you're like, dude, it doesn't work that way. Like marketing's a long-term play.
It's a long-term thing, right? And we have to understand and give ourselves some grace in our business, I think, too, right? That this is it doesn't just happen overnight. Now you hear those success stories of, man, this company went from 0 to 50 million and, whatever. Boy, I bet there was something that was built before that, right? Like there was a lot of skill set.
Yeah, there's just a random anomaly. Something crazy happened that they just, I hate to call it luck. I mean, it's not luck in my opinion, but the timing just happened to be beautiful.
So there could be timing in it when opportunity meets preparation, right? So, you may have gone from 0 to, whatever, 20 million, 10 million, whatever the big number is for you, like, or have seen in the industry. But I promise you, like, I know a lot of those stories that get told, and it's hilarious to me how many of those stories get told. I know the people inside of the company, and I know their experience, right? And it's like, they have this whole they have a skill set that was built that they're not starting from 0, right? Like, but you don't see that they're not starting from 0, right? Like there's this,
that's right.
And then a good storm hits, and boom. You know what I mean? Like,
that's right.
Maybe that's a good question to kind of wrap this up with. Like, the business goes away. You said, hey, man, there was a point in time where you're like, I could start Zimmerman Roofing, right? I could go and do this. I could do this again. We take the business away, the finances away, and the team away, but you get to keep your knowledge that you've gained. What would you do to start over?
Oh my goodness. Well, the nice thing about in roofing is it's quite easy to start over. And so it doesn't take much to you got a truck and a ladder and a couple $100 in your pocket and you're a roofer.
Yeah.
And so, wow. For me personally, like I can't separate the heart from it. Like I have a passion for helping homeowners. I feel that they are preyed upon by multiple different people or industries. And that's just an injustice, right? Like I hate to see it. And so that's really where my heart lies, is just helping protect those people from being preyed upon. So that's why I love residential. And I have a lot of guys that go, Chris, you're so good at claims and you consult these large losses. Why don't you just go get your own large losses? And I go, well, then I'm just helping like a corporation, a property management company or whatever. Like I don't get any joy from that. And so, but when I'm helping that homeowner that's in this like David versus Goliath situation, that brings me a lot of joy. So I think I would stay in residential. I love the residential side. There is a beauty of if the company went away just doing consulting and not having to manage people, because I don't love that. I love my people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love managing them. I don't love, I'm more of another term I frigging hate, a visionary. Like, I want to see, hey, this is where we're going. This is what it could be. This is what we need to do. I'm not going to coddle your feelings the whole way there. My attitude is, if you want to be a part of this, get in or get out, but make the decision now. I don't care either way, but this is where we're going. And so that makes me a pretty poor manager. And so with the amount of knowledge that I have at my experience levels, I think I would probably just go into consulting. I would find 10 to 20, 30 companies that really align with my vision, that really align with my values. And I would pour into them because I would be able to protect homeowners through them. And it's kind of humbling actually sitting here thinking about it, because you're asking me like, if you took it all away, what would you go do? And I'd be like, probably exact same thing I'm doing now, which tells me that I'm in a better spot than I may have really thought about or realized before you asked me that question. But I don't think I would change a ton. Yeah.
But the mission would still be to help homeowners. Chris, this has been awesome, man. Thanks for coming on. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. Thank you for tuning into the Roofing Success Podcast. For more valuable content, visit roofingsuccesspodcast.com. While there, check out our sponsors for exclusive offers, shop for merchandise, and sign up for our newsletter for industry updates and tips. Also, join the Roofing Success Facebook group to connect with other professionals and stay updated on the latest trends. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment. Your support helps us continue to bring you top industry insights. The website link is in the description. Thanks for listening.